Hello, everyone. Welcome to the new Great Hall setup.
It's a little bit like you're in our living room, almost. Yeah,
Yeah, welcome.
welcome. We're really, really happy to be here and have had a really great experience working with Crystal Bridges and with the Illinois River Watershed Partnership and all the great artists that we've met through this exhibition. So we're excited to just tell you a little bit more about Works Progress and then specifically about Water Bar and the kind of nuts and bolts, how we make a collaborative project with a community of people. And then also why. Is this working okay? Oh, I feel like I'm kind of cutting in and out. So Works Progress, how we describe Works Progress is a collaborative public art and design studio. Together with our collaborators, we create projects to inspire, engage, and connect. We're trying to build relationships across creative and cultural boundaries in order to enable new possibilities for artistic expression, civic imagination, and participation in public life.
And so what does that look like? The slide that's up now is kind of a collage of some of our work over the last 2 years or so. And it looks like a lot of different things. It takes many different forms. We work with a lot of partners and we cover a lot of different issues. And we're able to do that because of that model of working in collaboration and in partnership. And so some of the results of that work, it might be a publication, it might be a community engagement toolkit, it might be we're doing more and more video, it might be an event, or it might just be a couple people having a conversation and then figuring out what the next steps are and how to get that out there. We're not really interested in kind of the definitions, and we're really happiest when we're in that kind of gray space between different mediums and different kind of silos of thought, I would say.
So this is the Water Bar. I hope all of you have had a chance to see it or experience it at this point, but what we're going to talk about, as I said, is how we made this project and why. And I think to really start with, we'd like to talk about this idea of community and what we mean when we say community. And when we talk about working with community, we often mean both a geographic community, potentially, or a community around a certain issue or idea, but we also mean a community of practice. And what that means to us are all of the people who come together and work together to make something. So in the case of Water Bar, that is both artists as well as scientists, organizers, ecologists, policymakers. So we thought we would just throw that out there before we jump into that.
If you've been to Water Bar, just raise your hand. I'm curious. Okay, cool. It's like half and half. Awesome. So first we wanted to just tell you a little bit about ourselves so you know who's up here and you can get to know us a little bit. Shanai and I met each other in 2008 at an event that Shanai organized. And that has always been a part of our life. From the time that we met, we really connected around different ways of bringing conversation into public. And so that's been a part of our relationship and a part of our life from the beginning.
Neither Colin nor I have traditional arts backgrounds. So we don't have MFAs in art, but we do have backgrounds in, I have a background in museum studies and history of science, and Colin comes from a background in architecture and design, and we both attended arts-based public high schools. Is it just me or is this cutting in and out? Okay, yeah, maybe I do need that handheld mic. Can I just use that instead? Sorry, it's really gonna drive me crazy. Check. Hello, oh, okay, yeah. So not coming at this from a formal arts background, but from a kind of hybrid background that touches on art, science, design, organizing. And then having had really formative experiences with art and with a community of artists when we were very young in high school.
So in 2010, we both quit our jobs, we got married, and we incorporated Works Progress Studio, LLC. So it was kind of a big year for us. But there was a lot that happened before that. And we had already been working with a group of people that together we were a collective called Works Progress. And we had, for about a year and a half, we ran a kind of alternative community art space called the West Bank Social Center and had other projects with this collective. And we had been planning for about a year to make that transition from our then day jobs into doing Works Progress Studio as a full-time job. And we had a lot of support along the way to do that.
But it is important to mention that we didn't have, I think when we decided to quit our jobs, we actually had a breakfast with a group of other artist friends of ours, and together we decided that we would commit career suicide, which for us meant that getting rid of that idea of a trajectory. So we were working on, all of us were working in either design firms or, in my case, in a museum, in a nonprofit environment, and it felt like the imperative was that you sort of work your way up a kind of ladder, and that's what a career is. And like this was around the time that the economy was really doing poorly, and it felt like none of us would ever be able to advance in our careers just because of where we were generationally and the fact that people just weren't retiring. And so we said, okay, it's not looking like it's going to be that kind of career for our generation, and so why not just strike out and try to make something different and do something different. So that was a conscious decision that a group of us made together, and we had no safety net, which was really stupid, actually. Like, neither Colin or I come from families that have any money, and we had no savings, and so that has been a challenge all along, but I highly recommend quitting your jobs.
Which also just goes to say that this is a job. So it's our creative practice, but it's also our livelihood. And so since 2010, we've been making our living through the studio. And we can get into a little bit more of kind of how that actually works. We have a 2-year-old son named Matteson. So it's also our life. It's our livelihood, and it's our life, and it's his life, whether he likes it or not.
And it's also important to mention that we've been well supported by our community. So we've had a lot of opportunity both through building relationships with institutions and with other artists and with art supporters, but also because of that, it's also important to us to continue to support others in our community. So it's a really important part of all of our projects to think about the opportunities that we've been given and think about how to expand those opportunities and involve other artists and other people, and hopefully spread that around.
And a big part of that is because Minnesota is weird. This is where we're from. Just one of the ways that it's weird is that in 2008, the voting public of Minnesota decided that we would tax ourselves to give more money to artists and the environment. And this is at a time when arts funding around the country is getting cut, if it even exists in the first place. Minnesota stands out in that way, that we voted to tax ourselves more. And
we just have a very supportive environment in the Twin Cities for artists of all different kinds. And when we travel to other places, people are often confused about the level of grant support and other kinds of opportunities that artists have in Minnesota. So.
And you know, if you were here earlier, there was you learned a lot about the Northwestern arts ecosystem. And we were really happy to hear that kind of language being used here. And it's just to say that every place is weird. Every place has its own unique context, its own things that are awesome, and its own things that are not so awesome.
And we're particularly interested in how different places, whether it's a city or a region, what that ecosystem looks like for artists and for other creative people, and how, as an artist, are you active in that? How are you part of understanding that? Where do you fit into it? How do institutions and individual artists and informal arts collectives all work together in different ways? And lastly, we just say we love our jobs because we made them up, which was a quote that a friend of ours who runs his own design and landscape business said, that he didn't want to be kind of boxed in by what it meant to be a landscape architect, and now he's making furniture. And so we just really love that idea that you can make up, in a sense, what it is you do, whether it's by creating your own organization or in the job that you have, thinking about it differently and thinking about ways that you can be creative in whatever it is that you're doing. We really believe that is a good thing to keep in mind.
So here we are at Crystal Bridges. How did we get here? How did we come to be a part of the show, State of the Art? This here is just going to be some video that Chad Alligood, one of the curators, shot when they first came to visit us.
And by now you guys have all heard about the process of making this exhibition as a series of studio visits. And when we got the email or the call from Crystal Bridges, we quick went and Googled Crystal Bridges. Who is Crystal Bridges? No, to try to figure out what this was all about. And our first reaction was that there must be some kind of mistake. That they must have heard from somebody that we do something different than we do, because the work that we do isn't we don't typically think of it as the type of thing that ends up in a museum exhibition like this. We've definitely worked with museums in the past, but we usually work with the education department or outreach department to make public programs and to make education opportunities. So this was really the first time that we had started to think about our work in terms of this sort of exhibition. And because we work so collaboratively, the idea that the exhibition was based on kind of discovering individual artists, or at least that's what it seemed to us when we got the call, we really thought we aren't a good fit. And so I think we actually he called you and was like, I think you shouldn't waste your time, and gave you a list of other people that you should probably visit. But they said, no, we know what you do and we want to come and talk to you. And so we had a really good conversation. In the background, our son was crying with his grandma upstairs, and our studio really is just our kitchen table, because the kind of work we do, it's not the sort of thing that that's what our studio looks like.
So that's what that looked like, and what we were talking about when we met with Chad and Dawn was the things that were important to us, and we showed them some projects, but we talked about our values in the work that we make.
And so one of the things that's really important to us is that, as we've said, to work in collaboration. So when we decided to incorporate Works Progress Studio, we decided that everything we made would be a collaboration with an organization or with another artist or with a city, with a neighborhood group. And so we were kind of puzzled as to how that would happen in this exhibition.
Participation is a big part of the work that we do, and looking at that whole community of practice and including however you want to define it, the public or your visitors or your audience, in the process of what you're doing. And so looking at participation is a really integral part of your process and product.
And systems thinking is a really important part of all of our projects, to think about how an individual project is part of a larger system, whether that's a water system or a political system, and really thinking about projects as these kind of leverage points for changing systems or for getting people to engage with them and think about their place in a system.
And then finally, just this idea of opening up space and thinking about the kind of work that we do as a kind of making of publics, and creating that space that defines a public as something that is kind of between us, that holds us apart, but also connects us. And so a table is a good kind of metaphor for that idea of a public as something, you need that thing, something that you can really like grab onto that helps to define that idea of who am I and who are we. And so we look at all of our projects as doing that, or at least striving to create that kind of space.
So all of these things lend themselves to a kind of work that we thought didn't translate really well into a formal museum setting. And so the question we asked when Chad and Dawn called and said, we would like you to be part of this exhibition, was, can this work live in a museum? Would it make sense to do a project? And I think that that began a real process of negotiation, because the water bar as you see it in the lobby didn't exist when this conversation was happening. So this was a project we really made, in a sense, for this exhibition. And so that really sparked a collaboration with Crystal Bridges. And to Dawn and Chad's credit, and Allie and everyone here, they were just from day one super supportive of that. They were like, oh, we understand, like, you have this vision, what can we do to help you realize that? And so that was a really awesome thing, and that's where we knew that we definitely did want to participate. And so this kind of work, is not without precedent, right? I mean, there are other artists in the show. You've heard from many of them today who do work that's very similar. And it goes under lots of different kinds of names. So these are just some terminology that you might hear that is the sort of work that is similar to what we do. And as Colin said, we've used these sorts of languages to talk about our work at one time or another, but we really don't feel like what we want is to figure out which box we fit into, but rather what do these different ways of working have in common? And what can we learn from each other across these different ways of working? And this is actually something that artists across the country are asking and talking about, and we heard a bit of it from some of the regional and local artists today who are asking these questions. And so we're actually part of a national group that's forming called Common Field, which is a bunch of artists who work in these kinds of curatorial, artist organizing types of practices, who are coming together now to form a network that will advocate for research, funding, other kinds of peer-to-peer support, and networking networking of artists who are doing this sort of work.
And one really exciting thing about it is that when we started to meet, we were kind of called together, and on one end of the spectrum were Shanai and I and a few other individual artists. And our voice was just as important as the organizations on the other end, which were well established with history, like decades-long histories and $5 million budgets. And so to create a kind of like an even playing field was really exciting to us. And in February, we'll be opening up membership. And so this is not an inclusive group. It's for everybody who sees themselves.
It's not exclusive. It's inclusive.
Yes. Very important. And we're also really excited because in 2011 we went to Chicago for the first Hand in Glove convergence, and that is where the idea for this national group started. In 2013 we went to New Orleans and came together again, and in 2015 we'll be hosting Hand in Glove 2015 with the Soap Factory in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And so we're really excited to welcome, we're hoping for 300 people to come and spend about 4 or 5 days just exploring the current state of the common field. And we really invite you and hope that you'll think about checking it out.
If this is the kind of thing that you do or that you're interested in, let us know.
This was the first Hand in Glove was where we found like our people, and it was a really exciting moment for us to come together with all of these people nationwide that were doing kind of similar work, and so I really recommend it. So we're back to Water Bar, and we wanted to quickly go over kind of like in our practice, what were the different kind of seminal steps for kind of like getting to where we are with this project right now.
And so it really starts with thinking about our relationship to water. So we live in the Twin Cities, which is on the Mississippi River. And I grew up on the Mississippi River in a really small town, actually in northern Minnesota, where the river is so narrow that it actually freezes over in the winter, and we swim in it, and it's a very different Mississippi River than you will see coming south. And when I worked for the Bell Museum of Natural History, I had the opportunity to be an assistant producer on a documentary film called Troubled Waters. And what that documentary was really about was about the issues of land use and water quality, and what happens on the landscape in the upper Midwest and across the kind of agriculture belt of the United States affects people in Louisiana and south into the Gulf of Mexico. So how many of you guys have heard of the term the dead zone? And you know a little bit about issues of nitrogen pollution and nutrient pollution, and also the kinds of things that happen, not just because of agriculture, but because of just the ways that we use landscapes and how that impacts water. And for me, this was a really big aha moment, and not just because I was learning all of these things from scientists and farmers and about the different ways that advocates and environmentalists were working together to try and solve these problems, but that I really started to think about water as this thing that really connects us to each other and that really connects us to place. And I wanted to know more about what that meant in the Twin Cities. And so we started to do projects, and we're just going to breeze through these really quickly, and we're happy to talk more about it when we have some discussion at the end. But we started to do...
What year did that come out?
That was in 2009, I think, that I was working on that.
Yeah. And so in 2010, that was through the Bell Museum of Natural History, and we were also talking about that quite a bit, and we were thinking about, well, how do we connect to the river? If it connects us, what are some of those ways that we are connected to other people up and downstream? And the Mississippi Megalops was our first really works progress project that attempted to explore that. We also, if you saw Matthew Moore's talk last night, he talked about a Nuit Blanche festival in Toronto. We had our own in the Twin Cities called Northern Spark in 2010. And so the project that we proposed for that was an all-night floating Chautauqua aboard a Mississippi River boat. And you can see that down in the lower right. And so all throughout the night from sundown to sunup, we invited nearly 40 historians, scientists, park rangers, artists, storytellers, musicians to come and kind of illuminate this boat and to create this kind of cultural experience on the river. And it was a lot of fun. And that was kind of the beginning of reaching out to a lot of the people that we still work with today on river-related projects.
And then that project was so much fun. that one of the partners, the Mississippi River Fund, decided to adopt it as a yearly program. So now there's this program called River City Review that we still collaborate on, but it's every summer there is a series of riverboat tours where we bring together artists, scientists, storytellers, and each one has a theme, and it's just a chance to get people out on the river, experiencing art, engaging in conversations about some of the issues. And so this is a image from a riverboat tour that we did that was about the industrial landscape of the river, and we actually docked up next to a river barge and had folks who work in the barge industry talk to us about what they do.
That led to a project. So, along the way, over the course of a couple of years, we're collecting all of these stories and all of these different ways that individuals have their own unique connection to the river. And we're learning a lot. We kind of draw inspiration from a lot of sources, and Shanai had been reading Roberto Galeano, and we were really
Eduardo Galeano.
And we were really inspired by the way that he tells stories, and specifically the kind of stories that he tells. And so this idea of an upside-down history was something that we were kind of inspired by, and we wanted to tell the upside-down history of a 6-mile stretch of the Mississippi River. And so we worked with another artist, Eddie Olson, and for us it was also a writing project, which is something that was kind of new and exciting for us. And we put about 24 stories from the kind of beginning, some of the origin stories of that 6-mile stretch, to all the way through to current time, and compiled them in this kind of zine. And we took another nighttime tour of the Mississippi and kind of released this book.
And I also just wanted to mention another project that is a collaboration with an organization called Public Art St. Paul called the City Art Collaboratory, which a couple of artists who came with us here are a part of. And this is also kind of touches on this exploration of rivers and water and how you bring together cross-disciplinary communities of people. So this is a program that we selected a fellowship of artists and scientists, and we take field trips together to places along the river to look at different systems and also to meet different people who are working on different issues that touch on these themes. And so, for example, we visited the city's salting and sanding operation to learn about the ways that the things that we put on the road affect the water quality. We visited the district energy plant to look at this district-wide really sustainable heating and cooling plant, and now there are a group of artists who are doing a project with them to light the plume coming out of that. So, like we said early on, building that community of practice is really important. So having other artists in our community and scientists who are doing collaborative projects really just makes the whole ecology a lot richer, and that landscape of ideas becomes really exciting.
About a year and a half ago, we started dreaming up a kind of online platform that would collect these stories and collect individual experiences on the river. And through Deer River, we really want to focus on people's emotional connection to the river. So in the Twin Cities, there's all kinds of ways that people connect to the water, and some of the most popular are like through leisure or recreation, through conservation. But emotion, these really raw emotions aren't something that we often talk about. And so we wanted to create a platform where we could talk about those things. And so we kind of put them under the umbrella of a love letter to the river, with the idea of what if we could create a love letter that is as long as the river itself. And this is a work in progress. You can actually go to deer-river.org and submit your own love letter to the Mississippi or to any river. And then we had an opportunity to do some filmmaking and decided we wanted to kind of tell Deer River love letter stories through film. And you'll see one of those. So Deer River TV was kind of that expression. We've done about 7 of what will become a 10-part short documentary project called Deer River TV.
And so Water Bar, but prior to all of this, Water Bar was just this idea that we were kicking around. And we can tell you that, like a lot of our projects, Water Bar really started with a question that grew out of all of these other projects we were doing, which was, can we drink the Mississippi River? And when I originally came up with that question, I was actually thinking really pragmatically. Like, I wanted to do a project for Northern Spark, that Nuit Blanche festival, where we would set up a speakeasy actually on the riverbank and pull buckets of water out, and then what would we need to do to make it safe to drink? So basically, the idea was like, could we have this like laboratory right there where people were basically purifying the water and serving it directly to people as a sort of illustration of what that would take. And so I started doing research. I started calling all of these scientists that we had met and these water quality people and asking like, would that be legal? Could we do that? And they were like, no, probably not. But actually, here are some of the things that you would need to think about. And so it started this whole conversation about like, what actually would we need to do to these surface waters to make them drinkable? And that's really a question of what has happened to these waters prior to them getting to that place. It also was a point where the people who worked for the water treatment plants locally said, well, yes, you can, because you do. You drink the Mississippi River every single day, because in Minneapolis and St. Paul, we actually get our tap water from the Mississippi River. So then that led to this whole other way of thinking about it, which is that, oh, well, you probably shouldn't just go down and pull a bucket of water out of the river and drink it, but we actually do have, through our municipal water systems, these processes of getting these waters from these actual places. And so Water Bar was born as a way to get people to think about the simple thing, which is that water comes from some place. And that by asking that question, you're opening up this opportunity for people to slow down and really have an experience with something that they do every day. We all drink water, but how often do we actually think about where that water comes from and what that means and how that connects us to the places that we live, or to other places if our water is coming from someplace else. So we did Water Bar as a pop-up initially, and this is just at that TV program we mentioned, TV Takeover. We actually did a pop-up Water Bar. And we're just going to show you a little clip from that. And Dr. Carrie Jennings was our bartender. She's a glacial geologist, and I met her making that Troubled Waters film that I mentioned early on. So she's kind of now become a recurring Works Progress collaborator. So.
Remember, you can tweet your own letters to the river using hashtag TV Takeover and Dear River. Well, tonight, Works Progress and collaborators are opening Water Bar, a bar that serves local tap waters and is staffed by environmental scientists and other water resource experts. Let's check this out. So what's going on here? I'm here with Dr. Carrie Jennings, by the way. I should introduce you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so what's going on here? What do we have on tap?
Tonight we have 7 local taps, a variety of sources. There's quite a few differences that people are noting in these waters.
Yeah, all right. So what are the differences? What do they say?
Well, some of these are treated surface water sources. Minneapolis and St. Paul are 2 of the more notable ones. Some people want to do kind of a dueling battle of the 2 city waters. We have some bedrock sources. Shakopee and Champlain have some deeper units. There's a lot of people liking the Maple Grove. It's a blend of a deep bedrock source with a glacial source.
Can I taste that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it also is a very low price point water.
Oh, what does that mean?
It is, per 1,000 gallons, it is the cheapest one on the table here.
Okay, very cool.
I was going to prepare you a flight. Would you like
Oh,
a flight?
yeah. I'll start
Okay.
with the Maple Grove
Okay.
one. Yes, I'll start with the Maple Grove.
Okay.
I'd love to taste maybe the St. Paul and the Champlain, too.
Okay, St. Paul. This is the only lake water source mixed with Mississippi
Paul.
River and some groundwater.
Okay. I'm scared, but okay.
Well, it's state-of-the-art filtration.
Oh, that is actually really good. It doesn't
Yeah.
taste like anything, which I guess means it's
A lot of people
really
prefer
good.
that, yeah. And one with maybe a little more body might be,
yeah.
the St. Anthony is an interesting story.
Yeah, I'd love to taste that
This
one.
was a contaminated aquifer that the Army is now treating for free.
Contaminated aquifer. I know.
Well, but
There's a
completely
pause
safe
before
to
I
drink
do.
now.
Right,
So
I'll
they're
try it. I'm
making
gonna
it
do
so
it
that
on-
we can use it again.
Do it on live TV.
Yeah.
Here we go. No, not bad.
Yeah?
Not bad. All right. Well,
She's
thank you
lying.
so much,
You're
Dr.
welcome.
Carrie Jennings.
It's pretty bad. So that was the first time that we did Water Bar, and have since then been doing it as this kind of pop-up. And what the initial idea was to get these folks who we had met through all of this research, people like Carrie, who are really, really great at communicating these really complicated scientific ideas into direct conversation with people who might not really think that they have much that they're curious about with regard to water, but once you start talking, you end up in all of these conversations about things like, oh, this well was contaminated. Why was it contaminated? And it just opens up space for all kinds of conversations to happen.
Yeah, and so it's a way of understanding place. And so when Chad and Don asked us if we'd like to bring Water Bar to northwestern Arkansas, we really had to think about, like, well, what do we know about this place? And who are we to kind of come here and tell people about the waters here? We came down, we said, okay, we're interested. And they brought us down and showed us the museum, and of course we fell in love. And water is obviously such a big part of this place. But they also introduced us to Delia Hawk from the Illinois River Watershed Partnership. And that's when the light bulb went off that, like, you know, we don't need to be the ones that know about the water here and know about this place, because there's people here that do. And so meeting her for us was the moment that we were like, we can make this work.
And so that's where the real collaboration with Water Bar became about Crystal Bridges, about Works Progress, and then about Illinois River Watershed Partnership. And we're going to walk through now just like some really quick slides of how we go from like this is just an idea to actually building what you see in the lobby of the museum. And then we'll tell you a little bit about the collaborative aspects of it with Illinois River Watershed Partnership and the fabulous interns that are part of the project.
So this will just be a very brief kind of like abbreviated version of the design process from kind of one of the first sketches that I made all the way through getting it built and having it shipped here down to Crystal Bridges. We kicked around a couple of different ideas, and at first the Water Bar was going to be a mobile cart that would move around the museum. And after a while we decided that there was just kind of too much going on and it needed to have more of a presence and it had more infrastructure than we could do mobily. And I started thinking about what would that look like? What is this idea of a water bar? And I actually thought about something I had read about the Apple Store, which is that the Genius Bar was based on this idea of a hotel concierge. And I really liked that idea, and I could really see how the water tenders were concierges. You know, they were there to kind of facilitate somebody's experience and meet them where they were at and engage with them that way. And so this was one of the first sketches that I made after thinking about that idea of a hotel concierge. And that developed. I was really excited because my background is in architecture and design, and so that's building something and actually designing something that's going to get built like this is not something I've really had a chance to do since I quit my day job at an architecture firm. And so firing up SketchUp was a really exciting thing for me. And all of this work was able to happen because really early on we had a meeting with this guy, Aaron Dysert. And
Who's here?
Who is here?
Hi,
He
Aaron.
can maybe wave a hand. And so Aaron is somebody who builds things. And isn't that cool? Like, we
He's
have
a sculptor, so he makes art, but he also knows how to make things, other things.
Yep, and has worked for a long time in fabrication of exhibits and construction and things like that. And he was really excited about this project as well. And so we started kicking around ideas, and the design was really a collaborative process working with Aaron. And so here are some photos from his studio as he built up the frames. Thinking about our materials was really important, that the project was sustainable as we could make it. So this is reclaimed Douglas fir from up in Ely, Minnesota. It was important to me that the water bar had kind of an honesty in materials, and so the frame, the structure of it is exposed, so you can see how it's built. You know, thinking about like how do we get water into the containers that we're going to serve it from. We looked at a lot of different kind of inspirations, from more scientific than to looking at what homebrewers do. And so just looking at these systems and kind of trying to work with form and function.
And we knew those books would come in handy at some point.
All those are history books. Communicating the project, you know, for us, like, good design, I think, kind of runs through all of our projects, but really thinking clearly about what that experience would be and how it could be tactile, and how you would know what you're drinking, and kind of how that would connect to the other facets of the project. And so we spent about 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks, 5 weeks, building this, and we had a very short window of time where basically as soon as we got back from Bentonville and our first trip, we were like hitting the ground running. And from that point on, that's like all Aaron did. And maybe he'll tell you more about that over drinks later.
Because that's how it happened.
I helped out. I would come over and I would kind of like sand some wood, and he'd be like, "You're doing great, Colin." But he really is the guy who made that happen. And This was the day that we shipped it all up in an 18-foot budget rental truck, and I actually just drove it down myself. And it's about a 10 and a half, 11-hour drive, and it was a little nerve-wracking to have like our life's work, or at least, you know,
5 weeks of our life.
in the back of the truck.
Parents' life.
But it all worked out really well, and here it is coming off of the truck with the awesome Crystal Bridges staff helping us out. And it took a day or two to install, and then we were there, we were set up. But the crucial element that was missing at this point was the water.
One crucial element. So then the other part of the project, so there's that piece about the build project and how that design happens, but we're also always then thinking about all of the other pieces of it. So it's a really complicated project. We had to select which waters to serve. And so we were thinking, in conversation with Delia from Illinois River Watershed Partnership, we decided we wanted to have 3 waters that would give people a sense of 3 different experiences with water. So the first water that we serve is actually from Beaver Lake, Beaver Water District, and this is the water supplier for Bentonville and a number of other communities nearby. And Beaver Lake is a surface water source. And one of the things that we did as part of the project was Colin went out and filmed from the kind of landscape view of Beaver Lake all the way drilling down to the water treatment. So he went to the Beaver Water District plant and saw how that water was treated, filmed it. And when you're sitting at Water Bar, if you watch the TV, this is what you see kind of scrolling in the background. So that was our first water source. And then we wanted to also have a river water source. So we have water actually from the Illinois River and Siloam Springs. And I'm looking at all of the water bartenders back there because I know you guys know so much more about this than me at this point. That we should have you talk about it. But then the third water source was Sulphur Springs, which is a deep artesian well, and that's also a very different community. And so while we were picking these 3 waters, we were both thinking about the natural sources and the treatment protocols and the issues that touches on, environmental issues, but also the kinds of communities, the economic environment, the kind of condition of the public services in those communities. These are all points now of departure for conversation when people come to visit the bar. They're things that people could talk about.
So at the bar, instead of the football game, you know, up on the TV, this is what you'll see.
Which I think is really exciting, but so then I guess the most important part, the most important ingredient of this project are the folks who are tending the water bar every single day. And so with Delia's help, Delia actually offered this, which was so generous. She said, you know, they have an internship program. They really care a lot about the future of the environment and the people who are going to be the leaders in thinking about water issues and land issues and environmental issues. And so she really, I think, saw this as an opportunity, as we did, to provide an educational experience for some young environmental leaders. And so together we created a job description for water bar specialists. Did a search, and there were many applicants, but the folks who were selected come from a number of different backgrounds, from policy and politics to natural resource sciences to landscape architecture, and we brought them all together, and then what we needed to do was help them learn what it is to be tending the water bar. And so we came down here before the install, and we did a workshop with these folks. And I think for us, meeting them and finally meeting these folks face to face was this like light bulb went off of what this project is really about. Which is about people getting to know water and their connection to water and place, but also about the experience of these people who are going to be tending this bar every day as question askers, as sort of listeners, as conveners, as thinking about these bar tops as open spaces for conversation about everything from water to everyday life here. And so I won't go on and on about that because I think I'd rather have that happen in conversation, but part of the project was coming here and helping get them prepared for this job, which is really, I think none of us knew exactly what was going to happen. So it was like a preparation in uncertainty, I think.
Yeah, so the training happened 2 days before the grand opening, and then the next day we went out to some of the sources. And then we were open, and we were up and running, and we realized at that point that we were basically running a full-time bar.
We had opened a restaurant.
We had opened a restaurant, and like
together.
with all of the issues that includes. And just to give a quick sense of kind of scale, it's open full time. So whenever the museum is open, the water bar is open and staffed by 2 water bar specialists. So that's 50 hours a week. In 1 week, we're serving 5,158 glasses on average, which is about 60 gallons of water per week. And in an average week, 1,716 visitors come through. And so if that continues by the end of this project, which is about 4 months long, the water bar will have served between 25 and 30,000 people, which is kind of incredible.
Yeah, it's really insane. And, you know, those 60 gallons of water have to be collected and brought to the water bar, which is the other job of the water bar specialist. So I actually really think of that as this important performative element of the project, which is that they take these large carboys and they're filling them with water in these different communities and bringing them here to the museum. I'm sure you guys get questions like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? And so I think of that as also this point of thinking about how water has to, there's always a process that brings water to our taps and to us. And in this case, that process is living right here to tell you about their experience of filling these jugs of water and carrying them here. And all around the world, this is a process that people go through every single day. I think we forget that for a lot of people, that is how water is collected, and sometimes over greater distance. And so I think of that as being this important reminder.
Mm-hmm. And as incredible it is to think about just the numbers, for us, the real life of this project is in the minutia of the everyday experiences that the water bar specialists have with these thousands of people that are coming through. And trying to create space within this project for everyone who comes through to have a really unique experience, but also to be able to share their own water memories. And so as part of this project, we're asking everyone who comes through if they want to share a water memory. Maybe we'll come back to some of these when we do our Q&A so that we can spend more time reading them.
But what they're hearing are these kind of everyday experiences. I don't know if you put the next one in there as a very everyday experience. Yes. Water helped me with my hangover this morning. 2 things like our community is experiencing drought, and here is how this has affected us. Or we're battling with our municipal water provider about the things that they want to do to treat the water. So these kinds of things that, you know, aren't often part of conversation in a museum, certainly, an art museum, but with a group of strangers, of people that just happen to gather around this bar top.
And the water bar specialists are also journaling after every shift. And so there's a book, a kind of water bar log that at the end of each shift they'll go, and we've asked them to think of at least one experience, certainly more if they'd like to, that stuck out for them that day. So we're also collecting all of that. And some are also keeping their own journals. And so it's just been really cool to think about all of the different ways that we can tell this story when it's over. And it's actually kind of strange for us to be trying to kind of tell this story right now where it's still so much in process and happening.
And they also created a Facebook group. So we're all kind of connected on Facebook also. And so I love seeing the updates from the water bar, photos of people coming through, stories. And I really—
This is one of our favorite entries.
This is one of my favorite entries in the logbook, which is the commonly asked questions that you guys are getting at the water bar, which are things like, where's the bathroom? But what I love about this is that question that we started with, which was, can this project live in the museum? And what does that mean? And what it means is that it really does become part of it. So, you know, in the way that the cafeteria and the folks who work for 11 Restaurant are part of this museum experience and the things that they encounter, these guys are also part of that. And so just thinking about the life of an institution from a different point of view, I think is really fascinating. And that question, you know, is this a part of the art? We don't feel like it's our job to answer that. And we've continued to try and pose those questions back to the specialists or to have them pose it back to the visitors. Is this part of the art? Is that important? Is it important that it is part of the art or not? I think that's an open question. But that idea of having those questions is really important. The fact that I think it was one of the first days that we had a workshop with all of you, and I can't remember who asked, but they said, what are we supposed to call the visitors? And I was sort of stopped for a second, and I was like, what do you mean? And it was this conversation about, well, are they participants? Are they subjects? Are they part of the experiment? And I thought that that was a really insightful thing. Like, when we're thinking about social practices or socially engaged art, what do you call the people who participate? And what is their role? And what is their power or their autonomy in what you're creating? I just thought that was such an important thing to keep coming back to. So those kinds of questions are coming up all the time, and I actually think that's one of the biggest impacts of this project, is to really help us all ask lots of questions.
And thinking about, how the success of this project is measured, it's really important for us at least to be able to ask that question of the people that we're working with. And so this is just a short little video where every time we come down, we try to record a little bit more.
Welcome to Water Bar.
So that's what this
Water is all we have.
Just a couple minutes.
Okay. Go for it.
The importance of water cannot be overstated. As the Water Bar project so well describes, water is all we have. What's really exceptional is that Crystal Bridges Museum is a world-renowned destination, and yet they were really trying to find the local connections to address local issues and problems. And when Crystal Bridges gave us a call as kind of a local connection to our water resources, Crystal Bridges really served as the connecting point.
Myself and 7 other interns work rotating shifts during the hours that Crystal Bridges is open to make sure that Water Bar is staffed and ready for the public. When I started Water Bar, I thought that we would just talk to people about water and water quality. And Water Bar has become so much more than that. What we've been able to do by collaborating with Colin and Shanai in an art museum with a science-related topic at a pretty bar top is to engage people in a manner that is relaxing, they are receptive. It's a laid-back environment. We don't wear uniforms. We try to be ourselves as much as we can behind the bar, so that we can plant seeds for people to go home and think about where their water came from when they turned on the tap.
We hope to challenge the public, go back, find out, what watershed do I live in? Where does my drinking water come from? How can I influence up and downstream? One of the exciting things about the Water Bar project was to interact with college students from different diverse backgrounds, even different countries, cities, places, states, but different degrees. So we have biological engineering, we have architectural studies, we have business and marketing, and they're all coming at water from a different perspective, but how can they influence the public discussion about water and our water resources?
As scientists, we often look at relationships and we look at cycles, and science is full of circles. But what we often leave out, what we don't look at, is the human factor and the way that humans affect those relationships, and the way that people count. People count in those relationships.
We as individuals can really influence both the management of it and the wise use of those water resources and the protection of those. So everything we do has an impact. We would love to be able to continue investing in college interns that are taking their college courses now, maybe have recently graduated, looking for something in the field of land and water resources, so that they can learn as the public comes through and engages with them at the Water Bar. How do I take these very scientific information that I've learned maybe and take it to someone who's not necessarily educated about our natural resources?
Internships in Northwest Arkansas are few and far between. Very often it involves going and working at one of the large headquarters or corporations around here and just truly being a gopher for no pay or very nominal pay, maybe a stipend. What Water Bar has brought to Northwest Arkansas, particularly for me in the community college arena, is an opportunity to shine, an opportunity to show off our education.
And they are learning also how to be leaders. They are the ones that are going to inherit what we leave to them. We know where the conflicts are. We don't know where to engage if there's something positive going on. So the partnership is one example of local response to a positive approach. We want to see that grow and people to be able to join and engage in very positive ways to our challenges in the future.
So I think with that, we would really love to bring the lights up and just have a discussion, if that's all right. And I'd love to invite any of the water bar interns or Delia and Lori to come up and join us. We can move chairs around if that makes it easier, or we can all pivot. And so just to real quickly, what's next for the project? So we're keeping all of this documentation, and what we're hoping is that when the show closes, that we're able to take the experiences that these folks have all had and make something together, whether it's a book or a film. And for us, that's really as important a part of the project as what happens here.
That will all go up on water-bar.org, which is where we're kind of tracking the project, both here in Northwest Arkansas, but also in the Twin Cities and anywhere else that Water Bar happens. We just want to acknowledge everyone that's been so crucial in making this project happen, as well as this presentation, and say thank you.
Yeah, and so great, thanks. So I don't know if you guys have any questions or comments, or if you guys have anything that you would particularly, you think we left out, that you really want to make sure that folks here know about this process?
I just want to say thanks. These guys are so awesome. Stephen, Nathan, Riley, DeAndre, Hannah, Lori, and Katie. And thanks for the opportunity to work with you guys.
Thank you. I think there was a question right here.
Well, we all get different stories all the time. So at first it's like just a lot of different facts and opinions. I know that we get a general sense of water issues across the country and across the world based on just what people say to us. And that's interesting because we, I don't know, it's like it may be different from the actual reality at times, but it's good to see people's perspective, like the general public's perspective most of the time.
Well, for me, this experience has allowed me to learn how to communicate with people. So I came from an engineering background, so I know a lot of science. So this opportunity gave me it just allowed me to communicate effectively. I know a lot of science, but to put that into a language where the public can understand was really important to me, and I really appreciate Colin and Shanai for giving us that opportunity.
I mean, we do meet a lot of people from a lot of different places around the country, and to see the people from different regions and how they interact with water, people that are living in places that are going through drought, they know a lot about their water and where their water comes from. And then we'll meet people where they say, well, we have the best water in the world. Well, another person will come up 5 minutes later and say, no, we have the best water. So that's really unique to me, that people are taking pride in their water, or they're very concerned about their water. And it's nice to see people passionate about something that's so important, because, I mean, part of us is water, so that's been the best part for me.
I've also been, I've heard from a couple people that you're all surprised by how many people come and say that I only drink bottled water. And so they're coming to Water Bar and drinking like a municipal tap water for the first time in who knows how long. And I wonder how the kind of more unexperienced patrons, how you kind of deal with that. I don't know if Nathan, if you have any comment to that, or the last question.
It's pretty feedback. All right. Well, first of all, I also want to thank everybody, IRWP, Works Progress, and the museum for this opportunity. It's been an amazing experience. I have a lot of science background too, and not a whole lot of communication experience using that knowledge. It's been a real good growing opportunity for me. As far as people's concern about drinking tap water just right out of the tap, it hasn't been that common that people are concerned about it, but when they are, it's been neat to be able to go find like documentation on the chlorination and fluoridation processes and show them like the levels of standards that the municipal sources are held to, and that it in fact is quite safe. So that's been a good experience. I think educating people that are worried about it and would otherwise not want to drink that water, maybe give them the opportunity to reconsider.
I just want to say thank you to Colin, Shanai, and RWP and everyone for letting me experience this water bar. I learned a lot about water, but then most importantly, I learned a lot about myself. The water bar is a really comfortable environment to open up, and I never thought that I would be explaining water to someone else. And so the environment was very comfortable, and I learned a lot that a lot of people actually listened to me, and I was very surprised by that.
For me, Water Bar has been a really good platform to be able to step into the environmental education arena. I've had a little bit of experience with it at the community college that I work at. I'm also a full-time lab assistant there, so we do have the opportunity to work with school children and high schoolers at some point during the school year, but I've never had the opportunity to work with such a variety of people that we've met here at Crystal Bridges. We've gotten to hear about international water issues, local water issues that I was not even aware had been going on, or at least not for the length of time that they've been going on here in Arkansas. And then the other large, impactful thing for me is that I'm spoiled. I'm spoiled by having grown up in Southwest Missouri and living here in Northwest Arkansas for the last 15 years. We have an abundance of water here, and it is not that way, and we study it in school, and we learn about what happens west of the Rockies and rain shadow effect and lots of fancy scientific terms, but that's very different than sitting down talking to Sally, who lives at the top of the Rockies, and listening to her talk about having to water ration, or learning that towns just south of us in Texas are having to recirculate their potable water, mix it with lake water, and pipe it right back out to their residents. So that water, in effect, only travels 24 miles between the first time it comes out of a tap and the second time it comes out of a tap. And that's a real issue for some people in Texas. So as we move through this process, for me, learning that we are spoiled in Northwest Arkansas, and having a real opportunity to talk to people who live with the water issues that happen in different places in our country has been an extremely eye-opening experience.
I think we should thank Katie. Everybody else has. So here we go, Katie.
Hello.
Getting away with sitting on that side.
Well, obviously this has been a really wonderful experience, as you can tell from everyone's different perspective. What I really love about the water bar is I come from an architectural background, so there's not much science there, at least in this aspect. So for me, it's been a lot of learning about the water sources and kind of collecting these facts and sort of understanding the process for all three. But really, my favorite part is talking to people. People are cool. They say just sometimes have like the craziest stories, or just really fantastic stories that's just like, that moment, where, it's water. Sometimes people will come up and it'll be like a really odd thing for them to be confronted with, like talking about water. But we explain what's going on and what we're really trying to do, and the fact that we have no agenda and it's not really a competition or anything like that. And people really open up and share really great things, and I think things that they don't even think about or really acknowledge as like this great experience that they have in relation to water. So for me, it's really about the people. It's really fantastic.
So it's 7:37, and I just want to be respectful of everyone's time, but if there are other questions, which is to say if you need to leave, please feel free, and we thank you for coming. But if you guys want to stick around for a couple more questions, I'd love to make space for that too. Yeah. So I can think of a couple, but yeah.
So I got to talk to a couple from Oklahoma that grew up going to the Illinois River, and they're about my parents' age. So they had the childhood, and then their children grew up, and they took them to the Illinois River, and now their children are adults as well. So watching the river change and getting to talk to them about what we're doing at IRWP to improve the quality of the Illinois River, both in northwest Arkansas and then downstream as it approaches them, was a really cool experience because like they were acutely aware of Oklahoma and Arkansas's relationship in the Illinois River, and just being able to engage people that had no idea how much northwest Arkansas cared about not only our water, but their water too, because it we share it, you know? And ironically enough, after it connects with the Arkansas and Oklahoma, it comes right back to us. So I don't know. I think that was my most touching moment, hearing about their life on the river.
I like the different, I don't know, there's like different types of people that come with different levels of knowledge, and both of these have been like really rewarding experiences. For example, there was a mom and daughter that came that were just really curious about water, and it was like this was their opportunity to ask questions that they had never gotten to ask anyone before. And they were like, you know, I don't have a science background particularly. I'm in landscape architecture, but they were easy questions for me to answer because it was like, wait, but you know, how does water get into the ground? Like, water comes out, we get water from the ground, like, isn't it dirty? And then, you know, explaining like, oh, well, water percolates down and it takes thousands of years, so it's very clean by that time that it gets stored in the aquifer. And, you know, talking about farms and things, and they were asking, you know, wait, but there are farms like right next to the water, so there's poop it's going straight into the water. And I was like, yeah, that happens. That's a problem. So that was really touching, sad, and awesome that they felt like they could, you know, that they wanted to know all of these things. And on the other hand, there's people that come up every now and then that I start, you know, putting out a couple of facts to try to start a conversation, and somebody will just be like, yeah, yeah. And they're just like, they know all of these things, and I'm like, okay, so I'm gonna stop telling you things, and, you know, what do you know about water? And then they'll reveal to me that, like, oh, I'm a hydrologist, so then I feel kind of stupid. But it's great to, you know, I get to learn something at that point from a hydrologist. So it's like a classroom for me, and I'm the teacher and the student sometimes.
Can I share a story that one of you told us that I read in the book that I thought was really a nice, like, another aha moment for us? Was, I think it was you, Riley, who someone came up and he said, I don't believe in global warming. Convince me. Like, and your response, which was something like, well, I'm not here to convince you. Would you like some water? And then initiates this conversation. And, you know, if you think about how we're used to talking about these really contested issues, even if the facts are not really contested, the issues themselves are pretty contested. We're used to kind of giving people space for two sides, and then we kind of dig ourselves in, and we think that our job is to kind of pull people to our side, or and that this is really about saying, like, no, let's look for the common space in between and what we can talk about. Where can we start? And then see where that takes you. And I think that that's one of the important things about the project, is that it's ambiguous. That it's intentionally not saying this is how we feel about water, you know, that it gives people space to kind of engage, and I loved that story as one example of that, and maybe there are others, I don't know.
Yeah, kind of along those lines, the group of people that I was filming that you saw in that last video, they were having a great time, as you could tell. Those weren't like stock models. That was an actual group that came. Weren't they having fun? I know, I was like, this is like an ad. This is great. But then at the end, one of them kind of gets serious, and he's thinking about it, and he says, wait, what are the political ramifications of this project? Is this conservative or liberal? And you could tell that he had just had a lot of fun, but like he was trying to figure out how he really felt about it. And Riley did a really good job of just kind of like, you know, asking him, kind of reflecting the question back to him.
I think you said water doesn't have a political party, actually.
But for me, I kind of like had to take a moment, because I was like, that's exactly, for me, like in that moment, that was a success for me. And that like you could have this experience and then like not know how to feel about it at the end of it, because I don't know, like maybe you didn't have a preconceived notion when you went into it. And so I was really happy that, at least for that person, it created that ambiguity.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that was also Riley when you were here, when he came up and said,
Let's let Riley tell it.
Yeah, the guy who said, why is this art? Or he didn't, do you want to tell that story? You're pretty funny.
This gentleman came up and wanted to know what this was, and I told him, you know, we are part of the state of the art, you know, we're an art installation, and he was like, how is this art? This isn't art, it's water. And I had to try to explain, you know, and a lot of people, when you go out and you see nature, especially in like paintings, oh, that's art, look at the beautiful trees, look at the beautiful, you know, stream with the animals in it. And, you know, I kind of had explained that in the same way. We create this environment to talk to people about water. Water can be an issue, water can be an object for people, kind of like the one guy before, is this a political issue? This guy, it was an object for him because he uses it in his everyday life, so that's why he didn't see it as art. So I did my best to explain to him that, you know, this is a place for people to converse, have discourse about water and how we interact with it, how it interacts with us. And I think it was good for me, and it was good for him too, to think about water in a different way other than needing it to provide for himself and his family.
I think it's so great that this museum in particular at Crystal Ridges is about the crystal spring that's right here, and how this museum was built, and these ponds are from the crystal spring. And it was built 6 feet out. The natural environment was preserved and enhanced. And I love it that Chad and Don picked an exhibit that could be a part of a pretty rich heritage of this museum that will always be a part of this museum because of the crystal spring. And it tells a good story about a lot of the springs that are part of our area here where this museum is and surrounding area. But you guys have enlarged, you know, the discussion, and we just really thank you guys for, you know, seeing that as a way to engage people.
Do you think that?
because there was not a place where people could come in dialogue. It was either, and this is why I think sometimes water can be made to be political, and you only hear half of the story, but you hear this half or that half. You don't hear the whole thing, so you hear the good and the bad, but not together. And so that space where it's created, where let's find what we can do and work on together. But to do that, we have to talk, we have to collaborate. And that's what the partnership has always been trying to do, is to find that place and not make water a political subject, but to say, what can we do together to continue to preserve and protect and improve our watershed? And certainly you have to buy into that idea to leave your positions on one side or the other here, to say, I'm going to come here and work together. So I think in a lot of ways it helped us to say there were other approaches to water, and ours is one, but we think it was a approach that was missing or needed momentum and needed, there were lots of people out there that if they knew there was this kind of partnership to be a part of the momentum, that it just gives people an alternative to lawsuits or, just getting in each other's face and pointing fingers and blaming each other. Let's quit that. Let's talk about what we can do together. And that's what I love about what this collaboration is trying to do. But more than anything, I think it's the idea that we take our water for granted, and we can't do that. Cannot take water for granted. It's too important. And so let's think about what we need to do to make sure there's enough of it and that it's quality water.
I was just curious for you all working with the artists here and having this sort of experience, for you being scientists, has this gotten your thought process thinking about, maybe doing your own sort of artistic intervention around Northwest Arkansas and sort of ideas flowing?
This has been pretty influential for me particularly. As I stated earlier, I work at Northwest Arkansas Community College. I'm a lab assistant in the science department. And long before Delia started making phone calls to staff water bar, we have a 7-acre living laboratory behind our school, and I thought, well, we need to work with the art department because we need some signs. And actually just last week I went and touched base with our art department, 3 professors in the art department, as well as the art club, and drew in some history people and started trying to collaborate to get some things advancing in the living laboratory that I manage. So yes, it's been extremely influential for me outside of my life here at Crystal Bridges and with the IRWP. I don't know that I might have gone talk to graphic arts before I did this project here, but I don't think that I would have had a focused conversation. So to answer your question, it has been extremely influential for me, and makes the prospect of bringing art and science together a more safe, comfortable place to step from.
I think this experience has been, helpful to me because I'm really passionate about environmental issues and everything. But I realized that you cannot really throw a 200-page research paper at the public and say, hey, this is what's happening and you should change your behavior because of that, because really they're not going to read all of that. So it's important that you put what you have found, what your research, in a form where people can understand and participate in. And so this has made me think more about public outreach, because that's not something that I was ever taught or, ever thought I would be interested in. But I realized that, public outreach is very important if you want to affect change in a community.
I kind of have a much lower view. I really want the Illinois River School of Art, rather like the Hudson River. This is kind of a, start to that.
Oh, I guess anecdotally, I won't bore you with the details. I had something that I was trying to figure out how to make work scientifically as a tool. But while I was sitting in here earlier, coming to the end of the rope on that, figuring out that there was no way to get it to work, I was inspired as Colin and Shanai were talking that maybe, okay, I have to tell you a little bit about it or you won't know what the heck I'm talking about. So last spring, I took 6,000 pictures that I geo-referenced of the War Eagle Creek while I was paddling around in a kayak, and I wanted to mount a waterproof GoPro underneath the boat with a filter to measure how much algae, basically, is in the river. But to make it simple, it just won't, like, you don't have enough distance to do that. But I kind of, now I'm thinking maybe we can, not we, but maybe I can make an art thing out of it or give it to someone to be artistic with. Like I have the idea and I put a lot of work into it. So if anyone is interested, I'm just throwing it out. Could be cool, I don't know.
That sounds pretty awesome.
Yeah. I'll show you later, okay, if you have time.
We're way over time, so we probably should.